The Racoon City Police Station stood in eerie silence, its once proud halls now a maze of decay and despair. 4 survivors, Jade, Mark, Olivia, and Ethan, found themselves trapped within its crumbling walls, each haunted by the horrors of the undead city outside. But what awaited them inside was far worse than anything they had encountered. Dracula, the immortal Dark Lord, had found his way into their nightmare. Clad in his flowing cape, his eyes glowing with an ancient hunger, Dracula moved like a shadow through the halls of the police station. His presence alone twisted the air around him, sending shivers down the survivors' spines. They had no idea what hunted them, but they could feel it, a predatory force unlike any they had faced before. Jade, the most resourceful of the group, led them through the dimly lit corridors, the sound of their footsteps echoing ominously. And quote, "We need to find a way out. Stick together, and quote," she whispered, her voice shaking despite her best efforts to remain calm. The survivors turned a corner, entering the station's west wing, when a cold gust of wind swept through the hallway. The lights flickered, and the temperature dropped as if the very essence of life was being drained from the room. From the shadows, Dracula appeared, his pale face illuminated by the faint glow of the emergency lights. Mark, the brawler of the group, instinctively stepped forward, hoping to fight off whatever monster approached. But Dracula was no ordinary creature. With a mere flick of his hand, he sent Mark flying across the room, slamming him against the cracked walls. Mark gasped for breath, his vision blurring as Dracula's cold fingers closed around his throat. Without hesitation, the Dark Lord sank his fangs into Mark's neck, draining his life force in seconds. His body went limp, and Dracula dropped him to the floor like a broken doll. The others barely had time to process what had happened before Jade grabbed Olivia and Ethan. And quote, "Run," and quote, she shouted, her voice filled with terror. They sprinted through the labyrinth of the police station, desperate to find an exit. Ethan stumbled, his mind racing as the sound of Dracula's footsteps echoed behind them, slow and deliberate. They reached the main hall, the grand staircase looming before them. Olivia darted towards the safety deposit room, hoping to find something, anything, that could help. And quote, "I'll be quick," and quote, she promised. But as she entered the room, the door slammed shut behind her. The temperature plummeted, and from the shadows, Dracula appeared again. His eyes glowed with a sadistic pleasure as he toyed with her fear. Olivia backed into a corner, her hands trembling as she held up a gun she'd found moments
for this moment
earlier. "You think that can stop me?" Dracula hissed, his voice like the whisper of death itself. She fired, but the bullets were useless against him. He moved with inhuman speed, disarming her effortlessly before he stood before her, towering, his presence overwhelming. With one swift motion, he grabbed her by the wrist, lifting her off the ground. His fangs gleamed in the pale light as he sunk them into her neck, silencing her scream. Jade and Ethan heard Olivia's last, desperate cry and knew they were out of time. The police station, once a beacon of safety, had become a tomb. They rushed up the stairs, finding refuge in the STARS office, barricading the door with whatever they could find. The room was a brief sanctuary, filled with memories of officers long gone. Jade paced, her mind racing for a plan. And quote, "We have to find another way out." He's too strong. We can't fight him. Unquote. Ethan nodded, but fear gripped his heart. Unquote. What is he? Unquote. He whispered, barely able to speak the words. Unquote. I've never seen anything like this. Unquote. Jade didn't have an answer. But before they could formulate a plan, the room grew deathly quiet. The lights flickered, and they felt it, the presence of death itself. The barricade they had made trembled as Dracula appeared at the door, phasing through the woodlike. It was air. Ethan panicked and made a break for the window, but Dracula moved too quickly. In an instant, he was on Ethan, pulling him away from the glass, his grip like iron. Dracula's fangs flashed as he drained the life from Ethan, leaving him pale and lifeless on the cold floor. Jade was the last one standing. She backed up to the window, heart racing, knowing her time was running out. Dracula turned to face her, his eyes gleaming with hunger, his lips stained with the blood of her fallen friends. There is no escape from me, he said softly, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. Desperate, Jade smashed the window behind her and looked down at the streets below. The undead still roaming the streets of Racoon City. The fall was far, but death was certain if she stayed. Before she could decide, Dracula's cold hand wrapped around her arm, pulling her back into the room. His strength was overwhelming. He held her close, his lips near her ear. The night is my domain, he whispered before sinking his fangs into her neck, draining the last of her hope. The Racoon City Police Station, once a stronghold against chaos,
already.
now belonged to Dracula. The survivors had fallen, their blood feeding the eternal hunger of the Dark Lord, and as the moon hung high over the city, Dracula vanished into the shadows, leaving only silence and death behind.